It is a glorious, glorious morning. The weather is fantastic. And I've been listening to the Beatles. This fabulous little beat combo from Liverpool that sound like they're going to take off. They're going to be big. Russ Abbott big. I see, I've got to be really, really, really careful with the Beatles. I would literally listen to them all the time, all day, every day, which is not good really, is it? So I have to limit the amount I listen to them. Makes it still sound not fresh as much as, I don't know, I'm looking for something and I can't find the words. Because my mum and dad were teenagers in Liverpool during the 60s, grew up as massive Beatles fans, they have been omnipresent in my life. And you have got to just pick and choose your times when you listen to them. So they still have the impact, I suppose, isn't it? Don't lessen their impact by listening to them constantly. And I have to do that regularly with other bands as well. And it got me thinking, who's your favourite band? Who's your favourite band? Mine changes on a daily basis, but it doesn't. One day it'll be Radiohead, one day it'll be Yes, one day it'll be Talk Talk, one day it'll be the Stone Roses. But it doesn't, because it's always the Beatles. They're like the one true constant in my life. I can't say that about other bands. Other bands only came about later on in my life. Even Yes, who were a band before I was even born, I didn't get into them until I was 15. Although they are a huge part of my life as well. The Stone Roses only actually started being a band when I was, I don't know, 14ish. Was it 87, 88ish when they started? Might have even been a little bit earlier than that, but they were still, I was fairly grown up. The Beatles were there constantly. Since I was born, they've been on the radio in the car, cassette players in the car, 8 tracks at home. They've always been there. The one and only true constant. Radiohead only started in the early 90s. So it is literally just the Beatles. They're the only one true constant. Other bands have been there as well. Trying to think who else. Jerry and the Pacemakers, ELO, Simon and Garfunkel, Queen. Loads of bands that my mum and dad played all the time, but it was always the Beatles. Even then, I knew when I was a kid, they were different. There's a different quality to them. And I know some people don't like them. A lot of people say they don't like them, but they're just trying to be a little bit weird. Oh, the Beatles, they're not nowhere near as good as Taylor Swift. Fuck off, mate. Well, Taylor Swift's got more streams on Spotify, yes. There's 8.2 billion people on the earth. When the Beatles were around, it was under 3 billion. When Elvis was around, it was 2.5 billion. There's literally an extra 4-5 billion people around to listen to her music than there was to listen to theirs. If they would have been around now, their stats would have been off the charts, literally. But they're also, I mean, the Beatles, man, when you think about where they came from, and I don't mean Liverpool, I mean from I Want to Hold Your Hand, She Loves You, Yeah, 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 and all that, to I Am the Walrus, Strawberry Fields, Tomorrow Never Knows, all within the space of 6 years. Who else works at that kind of pace? The Stone Roses, I think it was 6 years between the eponymous first album and Second Coming, 1989 to 1995. Within those 6 years, the Beatles had just transformed music completely. And that's not exaggerating. They had completely and utterly revolutionised music in what you could do. Before they came along, everyone was just doing the same thing. And even when they started, it was all cover versions of Roll Over Beethoven and all the American rock and roll stuff. They come along, they wrote their own music, they sang their own music, which was a difference straight away. That was a huge change. But then to sing in their own accents and to then move things forward totally changed the idea of what is possible. You getting across there? It's incredible. And then they also laid the platform for hip-hop. Yes, you heard me right. They laid the platform for hip-hop. If you listen to Tomorrow Never Knows, that was one of the first major songs of any band to use sampling to the degree which they did. They chopped up bits of tape, they stuck it together, they looped it in what we would know nowadays as looped samples. And some of these tape loops went all the way around the studio because they couldn't speed it down and speed it up and slow it down like we can nowadays. They couldn't digitise it. They played things forward, they played things backwards. Absolutely off the scale, which is what you can do if you are a band full of creatives working with a producer, and he has got to get credit as well, George Martin, a producer who also thinks outside the box. The man with the clipped BBC tones, posh accent, shirt and tie, suddenly saying, yeah, we can do that. That's never been done. We'll give it a go. We'll see what happens. That's how you revolutionise music, having ideas. Just, what can we possibly do? We're sick of hearing the same old thing. It's amazing. Yeah, so without them, there wouldn't have been hip-hop the way we know it. Because most of hip-hop started off by using samples. The good use of samples, artistic use of other people's music that you wouldn't have had. Listen to being for the benefit of Mr. Kite. I can't get my words out today at all. So tired I am. Listen to that. All the bits that you've got with the fairground music in the middle of it, that was all just chopped up little bits of fairground music stuck together and then played, and it became this thing of its own. Years later, that's exactly what hip-hop producers would do. Steal creatively, go and take bits and pieces that will make something completely brand new. That would never have happened without the foresight of bands like the Beatles and producers like George Martin. What you can do in the studio completely changed overnight. Bouncing tracks down, bouncing tracks onto one track and singing live over the top of it. So instead of 4 tracks, you end up with, you can do, was it 16 or something? We used to do it with the 4-track Porter studio that we had. All because that's how the Beatles did it. We used to do it in a back room in Liverpool. Using 2 4-tracks side by side suddenly becomes an 8-track. That revolutionised everything. And genuinely, if you go and listen to the Beatles albums from day one all the way through to the last song on Abbey Road, Let It Be, those last albums, go back and listen from the start to the end. The difference between the beginning and the end sounds like it must be 20 years. It's not. Was it 7 years? 62, 63, wasn't they come out 63? 70 was when Let It Be and Abbey Road came out. Within 7 years, that change. It's incredible. So when people say they were shite, just being different. I had a conversation. It started off as an argument, but I'm pretty chill with shit like this. Some young lad, when Glastonbury was on, probably about 10, 15 years ago now, And he was going on about how the Arctic Monkeys were 1,000,000 times better than the Beatles and more influential. And I absolutely dismantled his arguments with reason and logic, obviously. But we had a good conversation about it, and in the end he went, you know what, I love the Arctic Monkeys as well, they're a great band, but without the Beatles you wouldn't have had them. That's true. Without the Beatles you wouldn't have had Yes. You wouldn't have had Radiohead. You wouldn't have had Talk Talk. Those bands, especially those bands, they created their music using the blueprint that the Beatles did by taking this idea of it's not just going to be a 3-minute pop song. We can, in terms of Yes, they can use a more orchestral viewpoint, a more classical viewpoint to arrangement and creating things in sections and sticking them together. Talk a lot of what Mark Hollis did, who then laid the platform for a lot of ambient stuff as well. It was using the studio as an instrument itself. And then Radiohead, everything they do is trying to push things further using either sounds or the studio instead of just being straightforward. They could have just carried on being an indie band. They were doing well when the Bends come out. They could have just done what Oasis did and rehashed the same thing over and over again and played to festivals and arenas week in, week out. But no, decided to, right, we're at the height of our fame. What we're going to do now is go a bit more electronic, a bit more avant-garde, and we're going to bring an album out and you can decide how much you want to pay for it and you can download it rather than buying it physically. And if you don't want to pay for it, don't pay for it. Just download it for free in rainbows. Pushing things forward. That spirit of what the Beatles brought out has been around in bands ever since. And we need that. We also need the pioneering spirit of hip-hop. Of taking something old, something fantastic, a lot of the blues and jazz stuff that they sampled. Take that and then move it forward. It sounds like it's stealing, and it is, but it's not. It annoys me when bands start going after new people coming through who've used samples. I understand that you don't want your stuff to be stolen and used for someone else's benefit, but it's moving music forward. Didn't someone move music forward for you in the past? I mean, like Bittersweet Symphony by The Verve used a sample of, it wasn't even a Rolling Stones song, it was a orchestral reworking of a Rolling Stones song, but it hadn't been cleared. So the Stones took every bit of money from that song until fairly recently, at which point they've gone 50-50 with The Verve. Did the same with, was it a Carter the Unstoppable Sex Machine song, which, quote, Goodbye Ruby Tuesday, so they took all the money off that as well. The Stones only became the Stones because of music that went before them. They stole absolutely wholesale from American bands in the 50s. And then as soon as people start taking from them, they start seeing their arse over it. You've got to let these people move things forward, otherwise we'll just be stuck. But it's brilliant when bands do that. I never had the appreciation about this until much later on in life, about hip-hop. Until I really started getting into the likes of A Tribe Called Quest and De La Soul. A Tribe Called Quest especially, about how surgical, almost surgical, they were in taking the samples and the reasoning behind why they were using certain samples. Because it was music that family used to listen to all the time, and it's like there's a vibe, there's something that takes them back to childhood, but something that you can take from that will also work for moving it forward. And also, if you use stuff like this, people who suddenly get into A Tribe Called Quest in the 90s, these youngsters who were born late 70s, early 80s, start listening to it and start reading through the sleeve notes, samples used, and we'll maybe go back and have a look and think, well, let's have a listen to what that was, Then suddenly their tastes go back a generation and they start listening to blues and jazz. That's the way we move music forward, but it's also a way we make the appreciation for previous music come through. But it's interesting the way it's worked anyway. I love it. And that's why the Beatles will always be my favourite. Doesn't matter what it is today, it'll always be the Beatles. It might be Yes, but it'll be the Beatles and Yes. It might be Radiohead, but it'll be the Beatles and Radiohead. It might be Talk Talk, it'll be the Beatles and Talk Talk. And of course, above that, there's always Russ Abbott. Oh, what an atmosphere. Anyway, sorry, tea.